The most fascinating thing about this entire conversation is the reality that there are opportunities to change this party that everyone is disgusted with, and a lot of people just kind of throw away that notion, like, oh, I'm not a Democrat, because, well, then what are you? You know, and then what are you doing? Right. What are you, and what are you doing? Because if you're going to just be a on the outside, never affecting, not even fighting to change it, then what are you doing? Right. And I asked this of, like, the Black left, and I, you know, we talked with Kyle the other day, and he was like, don't blame the Black left. And he had a great point, and I agree with them, but I've been chewing on that for a couple of days now. And now I'm like, but you know what? Yeah, don't blame the Black left, but then what are they doing?
I think we need to have a real conversation is the problem, right? I think that there are some issues with people who could be considered on the Black left, because you have a lot of not a lot, but there are militant, you know, Black leftists who will complain about Bernie Sanders being white or racist or whatever, but then will turn around and support Hillary Clinton, and it absolutely makes no sense. Now, like I said, Kyle, I get Kyle's point, and I agree, and we've talked about this a lot. Like, you can't just, and that's what's happening. Why won't you people vote for him? Like, you people should vote for him, that type of thing. And I think that makes a lot of people defensive. And they're just like, okay, we'll vote in the local, because local is what actually directly impacts our lives. Like we just saw with the ousting of the Chicago and Cleveland prosecutors, right? Like, they're very direct effects. You know, a lot of people have been in the same exact position the last 7-8 years, despite voting for Barack Obama. So we have a whole, that's not even the Black left per se. That's just a group of voters, period, in the country that, I mean, it doesn't matter what we do anyway, because they're going to do whatever they want to do and put whoever they want to put in office. But when we're talking about the Black left, go ahead.
Let me ask you a quick question then. Would you equate voting for, it's a doozy I'm about to ask you. Do you equate voting for Barack Obama with voting for Bernie Sanders? In the sense of, you know, voting for Barack.
I think the comment that's continuously made to me is it's still, you know, Bernie's cool and everything, but it's still a corrupt system. They're still not going to let anyone ever do anything. You know, it's still this notion that there is some, you know, big conspiracy to keep everyone down, and that you can never change anything, and that no matter what you do, so it doesn't even make any point wasting your time doing it. Right. And but at least people are starting to see the importance of the local level. I mean, and maybe hopefully we can kind of get that, you know, people to thinking more about the upper level. You know, I've had people say to me like, well, we survived Reagan. True. We survived Reagan. I mean, like,
if you know, it's just survive, you mean we're alive still? I think is that the measuring? We're alive.
It's just like the rationale for not voting is baffling when you're someone who believes in the transformative power of political engagement, right? Like, I believe when we use this term transformative can mean a lot of different things, obviously, right? But like, I believe that political engagement, that when people come together and really involve themselves, that change can actually happen. However, there are some people who think that, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. You know, my thing about what was supposedly tried before, especially when we're talking about, you know, civic engagement stuff coming out of the 60s, I don't think there was enough follow through. Okay, yeah, we had a bunch of laws. You had Jim Crow, you have slavery, then you have Reconstruction, which lasted a hot second, and everything went back to the way it was. Then you have Jim Crow. Then you have like a few laws passed over a 10-year period. You still have people fighting to even get busing implemented years after Brown, like a decade or two. Well, not a decade or two. But you have Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. And then you have, you're still having places like Virginia trying to institute busing and integration in the late 60s, early 70s. So like, you have this long period of time where you're just fighting to implement the laws. And then all of a sudden we get like to the 80s and everybody's like, okay, we're not racist anymore. No big. And it's just like, but like, that's not even enough time. There's not enough effort to really actually, I mean, it's going to take time. You know, we can't just say, okay, well, we voted. We did what we're supposed to do. Now give us stuff. Like, it's not like that. And I understand like a lot of frustration with Barack Obama. You know, they're the Black left. There are members of the Black left who are very angry because Obama didn't do anything for us. Well, my argument is always that we didn't necessarily put out a platform or something. We didn't come into the election and to his inauguration saying, these are the things that we want. We helped deliver this vote. This is what we want. But there were other groups that really did line up and say, okay, now we have your back on the vote. You need to have our back on these set of issues. Yep. And I don't really feel like that as Black people, because like someone made a comment earlier today, one of my women friends who's studying for the LSAT, you know, like I said, in the chat room, a lot of people were upset that he didn't nominate a woman of color, particularly a Black woman, right? He has a nomination opportunity. You know, we've had only a few people of color who have been nominated, period, right? We've never had, you know, we haven't had a Black woman. So like she was talking about that. And then she was also saying like people are still like defending him, like, oh, well, you know, we're just biding our time. It's going to be our turn. It's going to be our turn. And then somebody else was like, well, it's 2016. What are we waiting for? Like, what are we waiting for? And why are we still like giving people like this leeway?
But it comes back to the bigger question of what I said before. What are you actually doing? Like, are you actually organizing to hold him accountable? It's about political capital and power. It's about organizing. I mean, let me just start the whole conversation over here.
No, I agree.
It's about organizing. And if you're not organizing, you are irrelevant. Period. Your movement is irrelevant if you're not organizing, because they don't care about your passion. They don't care about your momentary protest. They don't care about your series of protests. They need to know, are you organized such that you can become a political threat to them? If you are not a political threat, you are irrelevant. And so to everyone who's complaining about what Barack Obama didn't do, for everyone who's complaining about how corrupt the DNC is, which I agree is corrupt, and how corrupt the system is, I agree. There's corruption through and through. My question to you is, are you organizing?
Well, that's the problem. Like, people are organizing, but they're organizing around very specific, particular issues, and what they're organized around. No, I was just saying, like, there are people organizing. Like, I see, you know, people are talking about Black Lives Matter in the chat room. And one thing I want to say is, like, everyone acts like that there was nothing done before, like, Black Lives Matter as we know it came into existence 2 years ago. There have been tons of groups, you know, especially even with the chatter the past few months about reparations. Most people don't know about the group NCOBRA. NCOBRA was founded for the purpose of addressing and dealing with the issue of reparations. NCOBRA's been around for, I mean, I think at least 2 decades. Like, you know, you have Critical Resistance, which deals with the prison industrial complex. I mean, there are all these different groups and organizations that have been around for decades, you know, in a post-civil rights movement era, but because they have been local grassroots, they didn't necessarily, I mean, even when we talk about Black Lives Matter, the hashtag itself, right? The actual women who started the group aren't even the ones that became the most well-known and famous, right? It was other people who were able to leverage the social media and the hashtag that actually became the faces, so to speak, of this new movement. But yeah, people are organizing and people are getting there using platforms, but certain platforms are very narrowly tailored. They're not encompassing a wider range of issues, and at the same time, it's not like that's being used to leverage the vote, though. You know, like a lot of times you hear a lot of these interviews, like even when they talk about, you know, when they talk about why they weren't going to endorse a candidate, you know, it's like, we're not trying to be involved in politics, but at the same time, you're trying to be involved in politics. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say we want to engage the presidential candidates, but then say we don't want to do anything about, you know, politics. Or we're not having, like, our group here in Atlanta just now started doing voter outreach. We just had a primary. Like, I even heard it on the radio. They were talking about, well, you know, you should tune into the town hall last week because you should know where the candidates stand, and, you know, voting is important. We just had a primary. Like, we just had a primary, and there was no interest in doing voter outreach. And now all of a sudden, we're not, the political know-how, the political savvy is not there for a lot of people who are doing this work.
That's what I'm talking about.
And they're not willing to listen.
I know. Well, that's a bigger problem there. But there are groups that organize everywhere,
Yeah.
Saying, are you organizing for political action? Are you mobilizing to
Right.
impact the political system? You can organize to take care of an issue that's local that you needed to.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Do that. And I think people do that well. But are they organizing to impact the system that every 4 years, that people just get aware of it every 4 years? They're like, oh God, I hate the way the system operates. Oh goodness, I hate the, there is political capital in organizing and then using that organization as a political force. And as soon as Black Lives Matter laid down the fact that they were going to be a political force, they became an irrelevant force. Yes, you can shut something down, but all I have to do is wait you out. The election's coming around the corner. You're not going to endorse one way or the other. So see you later. You lose your political efficacy when you don't.
And it's good. And the problem, I think the problem too about like using those groups, and the problem is like also when people say Black Lives Matter, there is like a general movement. There's a specific group, and then there's a general movement, right? There are a lot of different groups. There's a hashtag, right? That spurred a movement. There's so many different groups out there that do different types of work, and there are different levels of activism. Like when you have I'm blanking, the Minnesota neighborhood. I'm blanking on the term, on the group's name out in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, but I'm blanking on the name. But anyway, but they're in that vein, but they're organizing and they're leveraging. They did a people's caucus when Minnesota had its caucus. I don't know if people are aware of this. When Minnesota had its caucus, this group organized and had people at their caucus sites all over the state with basically a people's referendum to get referendums passed on certain issues. Now, I'm not really sure how the caucus process works there, what this all meant, but it was just amazing because they were getting fellow caucus goers, just regular people who all show up at caucus together. They were giving time, presenting their referendums. They passed referendums on Fight for 15, on reparations, on like so many different issues. And they're leveraging their community organizing and power to actually infiltrate and inform and engage in the political process. And I think that's great. And that's what, we can't necessarily model that specifically because that's a caucus process, but to try and understand kind of how they're engaging with the community, I think we do need to start having more roundtables, conference calls, things like that to kind of like help share. We have all this technology and we don't need to recreate the wheel, right? Like you said, a lot of us are working a day job or 2-day jobs where a lot of us are raising families or we have elderly relatives or whoever else with other responsibilities. So we need to be smart about how we're engaging because we don't necessarily have the political access. And no, we're not going to get some fairy, liberal godfather to come and bless us with their money because we don't necessarily need someone to drop a whole bunch of money on us because people with money always want something. Like,
right.
There's always some, so we have to do it ourselves and figure it out.
But the key thing, the key difference, Noah, what you described that happened in Minneapolis is a good example of organizing and creating a political impact and infiltrating, right? The thing that's missing is the capitalizing on the numbers that we actually have access to. When we were organizing, and I'm old enough to remember a time when we just were not connected like this, where I could just cut on my computer and connect with somebody in Atlanta.
I didn't have a computer until college.
Hell, I mean, I had dial-up, so you couldn't do this, right? We are living in a time where now we can actually get access to 1 million people, like-minded people surrounding one issue and organize on a local level from a national perspective. That type of organizing is something that we have an opportunity to do now that frustrates me because I see a lot of people who have the passion, they have the desire, but then they're still opting out because they don't think they can change anything. And I'm like, do you not realize what we have the capacity of doing now? And so when I say, are you organizing? I'm saying let's say Bernie Sanders doesn't make it. There are going to be a few million, like millions of people who are still wanting a revolution. And the question is, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do After that, are you going to now take those millions of people and let's push them into the local level, wherever they are? That's 50 state infiltration. That's 50 county by county. That's infiltration on every county level. The party that you are upset with right now would be completely changed if those people who are disenfranchised and angry right now, instead of just throwing in their towel and saying, I'm going back and I'm waiting for the next person to be my inspiration, you need to be your own inspiration and to take that energy, win or lose. Because like we said, even if he wins, he can't do it by himself. We don't give him a progressive Congress by getting him elected and then going home. The job has to start. And I'm talking to us. I'm talking to the Progressive Army more than anything else. We got the model. We know what to do. We know what to do. All right, I got 10 minutes and then we're going out of here. I'm going to take this caller.